Today's topic is step 3 for intimacy anorexia. Now, we've already covered step 1 and 2, but step 3, you go into deeper waters. So I want you to stay tuned. I want you to watch the whole thing because there's some ideas here that can actually change your life. I know they changed mine. So stay tuned. Now, if you have not subscribed to our channel, please, we have over 300 videos plus, lots of things that can help your life, your marriage, your relationships. So hit the subscribe button. And if you have a question, please put it in the box. We love responding to you. We get to you as soon as we possibly can. And we love when you let us know what you think are topics you want to hear about. So do that if you'd like. Step 3 for intimacy anorexia. Now I'm going to read the step and I want to go through it and parse it for you because this is a big step. Now, intimacy anorexia is the active withholding of spiritual and emotional and sexual intimacy from your spouse. Now, the step made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand Him. Now, step 3 is a process. So before we get into this, it usually takes weeks or about a month to go through a step. And if you're working one of our workbooks, like the one on intimacy anorexia, it might take you, days, weeks maybe to get through this. Generally speaking, a step a month is a good idea if you're working through the intimacy anorexia workbook. This one is important. This is the first time we heard the word made in the steps. We have to make a decision. Now, the word made is past tense, and the people who wrote the steps, they're talking about what they did to get well, to get sober. And when an intimacy anorexia has made this decision, it is a huge difference. When all addicts make a decision, this decision, it changes their life. It changes the way they think, it changes how they make decisions, and listen to this, it changes who makes the decision. Now, made a decision, this is a process. And for some of you, you have no spiritual background and you've went through the power greater than ourselves and you're still searching, and that's wonderful. Go ahead and search and find and check out spiritual communities and do what you need to do. But you've made a decision. This is the end of the journey. This is not the searching. Now, in a relationship with God, it's ongoing. I get that, but there's a decision. When you decide to marry somebody, there's the dating, there's the courtship, there's finding about them, there's listening to them, there's building a relationship. Then there's a day you say, I do. That's step 3. Step 3 is a culmination of a process. So if you're in the process, give yourself permission to be in the process. Allow yourself the time. Read scriptures or spiritual literature. Let yourself soak in spiritual principles. Recovery is a spiritual process. We'll talk about that in step 12. Now, so we made a decision to turn our will. What exactly is our will? Now, in the big book, they talk about alcoholics, and really it's self-will run riot. It's almost being addicted to the willfulness, to do what you want to do. No one tells you what to do. Only you're your own boss, and you decide everything in your life. See, it's your will. Now, the human will is the most powerful thing you possess. It determines what goes on in your life. It determines even after life what goes on. So the human will is free. We're free to decide. We're free to destruct. We're free to create. We're free to be a blessing and encourage others and change the world. For every person who is on the dark side, there's equally someone who's on the bright side. We need to turn our will. Okay, that's us. That's all of us. It's how we do our lives. Okay, it's how we make decisions. It's why we make decisions. We're turning that over. Now, when you're turning over your will, that means that you're no longer the boss. And we'll get to who is in a minute. But that means you're relinquishing It's no longer a me process, it's a we process, just like marriage. You know, when a single person walks down the aisle in their little white dress or his tuxedo, they walk down single, but they leave a we. They say publicly, right here, right now, I'm gonna die to all of my single identity, and I'm gonna co-create a we identity. Doesn't mean I lose myself and my personality, but I'm blending, I'm becoming part of something bigger. That's turning over your will. I'm not gonna think the same. I'm not gonna make decisions the same. I'm gonna consider another in the process. So we're turning over a will. We're saying, I stop here today, now. That's why the steps are past tense. You can point to a time and a place when you made this decision. For some of you, it was a spiritual encounter. Maybe you went down to an altar, or you met with a spiritual leader, or someone met you on the street and told you about God. Okay, but there's a point in time when you said, I'm not gonna do my own thing anymore. For some, that's in the prison. For some, that's when you got caught. For some, that's when your husband or wife said, I'm not putting up with not being loved again. I'm not doing this. You know, we have a video called Pain for Love, and we get a lot of calls after that video because it shows how much pain the spouse of an intimacy anorexic is in. And they often will then turn around to their spouse and say, I'm not doing this anymore. And if the intimacy anorexic turns their life and will over, they can make better decisions, and they can actually be part of kind of healing that process. So we made a decision to turn our will and our lives. That's everything. Okay, the will is how you make decisions. Our lives is everything. That means you're going to put at the feet or submit to God, and we'll get to that in a minute, everything. Your financial decisions, if you give money, if you hoard, if you spend time, your entertainment, your intimate relationship, your family relationships, people you call friends that may be or may not be supporting the vision of you growing. So this is a really big decision. This is not a light decision. This is almost one of those decisions. You have a ceremony like this ring I'm wearing, okay? And you say, I'm making a big decision. I'm changing my life. I'm not gonna do it the way I used to do it. I'm not gonna think the way I used to think. I'm not gonna hang with the people I used to hang with. I'm not gonna decide the way I used to decide emotionally, you know, kind of rebelliously, like no one tells me what to do. You can't tell me to love you, okay? Now, if you're an intimacy anorexic, you know, withholding love is really painful. It's not something you want to be addicted to. So this step can help you not be addicted to it, okay? Because no matter what version of God you pick, He is love. And He doesn't withhold His love. He gave His love. And He wants to give love through you as an intimacy anorexic. And if you turn your life and will over to Him, you could be a conduit of that love. You could be a story of a loving man or woman, an intimate lover. Not just, hey, I'm checking off the religious box, I'm saying the right things. But I mean a lover of your spouse, anticipating their needs, knowing what they want, being there for them, showing up, sensual in your touch and your words, romantic with notes and things. And if this sounds like far stretched to you, it might be because you're just on step 3. But listen, the goal of intimacy and anorexia recovery is not to check off the box. It's not to suffer through. It's to be the greatest lover your spouse deserves. That's the ambition of healing from intimacy and anorexia. And if you get that, the steps, you want to do the steps. You want to get there, okay? So we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. Now, this is a departure from step 2. In step 2, we talked about a power greater than ourselves. And the original step 2, was actually the word God. But this was in the 30s, which back then it would have been Christianity or Judaism and Catholicism would have been the primary religions in America when this was written. There wasn't all this other stuff. And the concept of higher power is not in the 12 steps. Okay, it's in the A book, it's mentioned, but it is not part of the 12 steps. Okay, so someone who has a higher power isn't doing the 12 steps. They're doing something else. Okay, if they have a power greater than themselves, they're on step 2. When they meet God. Now, God is different than a power greater than ourselves in this way. 1, He is a person. He loves you, He cares about you. You might have bad dad experiences, but he's like a father that would be a good experience. Someone who really does care about you. Someone who you're somewhat alike. You have the capacity to love and to give, and you could open your heart as an intimacy anorexic can become like that father. You don't have to stay stuck withholding and controlling and trying to be safe. That's an awful way to live. You don't have to live that way. But God has authority. So number one, he's a person. Number two, he has authority. See, a power greater than self is a little kind of nebulous, but God is not. When we use the word God, it means he is greater than us. He is more powerful than us, and he can take us out if he wants, but he doesn't want to. He wants to love us. He wants to spend eternity with us. But he's greater. And when he says yes, it's yes. And when he says no, it's no. And we're beginning to lean on a wisdom and counsel that is greater than ourselves. Okay? God himself wants to have a relationship with you. He wants to talk to you. He wants you to know his heart, not only for yourself, but for the spouse that you're married to. That you're not, you're not just having a relationship with God, but if you're married, you're actually having two relationships. God's not just your father, he's your father-in-law. So the person you're turning your life and will over to is your God and also your father-in-law God, who created and loves your spouse. And the way you're treating your spouse is probably the way he has some feelings and thoughts about you. And if you never thought about being a son or daughter-in-law of God, you might want to take a moment and pause and write about that. Now it continues, as we understood him. And coming to understand God, that's a process. You're going to learn, I'm still learning. I mean, I've known God for over 35 years. He is great. He's wonderful. I love worshiping him. I love reading about him. I love learning about him. I love serving him. But I'm still growing. Okay? So as we understood him, which means you had enough knowledge, okay? It's kind of, again, going back to that marriage. You date this man or woman for hopefully months or years, okay? And you get to know them. And you know enough that you can commit to them. And there's a place when you know enough about God that you can fully commit your life and your will and turn yourself over to him so that you can heal from intimacy anorexia and you can manifest love towards your spouse. Now that is step 3. I hope you do step 3. If you have the Intimacy Anorexia Workbook, please work through that. And again, if you've not subscribed, please do. If you have a question, please send it. We want the best for you, and we hope this was helpful.